All right, dim the lights and gather round, fellow folklore enthusiasts. Tonight's explainer, well, it isn't just a bunch of data or dry historical texts. No, we are absolutely leaning into that classic campfire ghost story atmosphere for this one, because we're looking at a genuinely chilling local legend. We're going to examine a first-hand account of a terrifying encounter that is honestly practically guaranteed to send a shiver right down your spine.
So, have you ever heard the legend of Eden Hill? Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into the dark, quiet streets around Eden Hill School. We're going to unpack this visceral, terrifying local encounter, and more importantly, we're going to uncover the deeply tragic history that birthed the legend that people still whisper about today. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. After Hours at School.
So picture this. Our protagonist is a student, just grinding away for final exams. To help kids prepare, the school library, which usually closes at 5, was actually kept open until midnight. You know, it's a familiar, safe setting, right? Just a dedicated student living right near the school, trying to get ahead in this quiet, calm environment. But look at how the evening progresses here. At 6 p.m., they arrive. Totally normal. 8 p.m. is when they'd normally pack up and leave, a time when there's usually still at least a few other kids hanging around. But they decide to push through to 10 p.m. And at 10 p.m., absolute silence. This creeping isolation really starts to set in. The familiar library suddenly just feels entirely empty.
With just, 10 to 15 minutes of work left, the student is completely lost in their studies, and then that absolute silence is broken. Not by a book dropping or the wind, but by the distinct, rhythmic sound of someone limping nearby. Just the sound alone is incredibly unsettling. The student immediately panics, throws their books in their bag, and literally runs out of the library. Fleeing down this really long corridor toward the school's right side exit door, the student suddenly sees a strange woman standing at the very end of the hall. With every step closer, the air just grows heavy and, well, unbelievably uncomfortable. Desperate, the student calls out into the dark, "Who's there?" And the second those words leave their mouth, she vanishes, just gone. Breathing a massive sigh of relief, the student pushes right through those front doors. Which brings us to Section 2, the empty street. So the student bursts out into the night, heart absolutely pounding, exhausted, hungry, and just completely desperate to get home to safety. And this brilliantly illustrates a classic horror trope that plays right into our primal fears. Notice the completely unnatural contrast here. Normal nights on this street, it's usually bustling, super busy with people walking around, even late at night. But tonight, it is completely strangely empty. That unnatural isolation of the environment just amplifies the terror immensely.
Staring firmly at the ground in the state of sheer panic, just trying to put one foot in front of the other, the student notices something that should be impossible. A shadow suddenly stretches out on the ground, reaching right toward them. But remember what we just talked about. The street is completely empty. There is absolutely no one around them to cast that shadow.
Moving on to Section 3, the limping shadow. The student slowly lifts their head in pure dread. And there she is, the strange woman. She's walking right in front of them, but painfully, impossibly slowly. So slowly, in fact, that the student catches up to her in practically no time at all. As the student gets dangerously close, you have to notice these horrifying physical features. She's wearing tattered, dirty clothes. Her hands and feet are unnaturally twisted, making her look disabled, which completely explains that horrible limping walk from earlier. Her hair is just completely messy and unkempt. Literally every instinct in the student's gut is screaming at them not to get any closer, but they're just too terrified to even try walking past her. Then, the entity asks a strange question, one the student's numb brain can't even process out of pure shock. Frozen, unable to utter a single word, the terrified student simply raises a shaking arm and points far, far away, basically communicating, "Go there. Just go away."
And miraculously, the entity obeys. She limps away toward exactly where the student pointed, walking so far into the distance that she completely disappears. The student, terrified she might somehow return, runs as fast as humanly possible, just desperate to find a car or a house or another person. But then, from the pitch-black distance, a horrifying scream pierces the night. She is here! The sheer terror of that echoing scream is so overwhelming that the student completely blacks out right there on the street.
The nightmare ends, or so it seems. Section 4, the legend of Eden Hill.
The student actually wakes up safely at home, having been found passed out on the ground by a neighbor. But this neighbor, well, they happen to be the keeper of the local lore. And from them, we uncover the incredibly dark folklore that actually fuels this terrifying night.
Let's jump back to 1998 and see how this builds the foundation of our legend. Because this wasn't just some random ghost. This whole encounter is rooted in a very specific, deeply historical tragedy for this local community.
So the crucial point here is the heartbreaking contrast. To the student, the entity was the monster, a twisted, limping, terrifying shadow. But the reality? That was Agatha, a 32-year-old grieving mother. Back in 1998, her 10-year-old daughter, who actually went to Eden Hill School, died in a really tragic accident while she was out playing with her friends.
Agatha simply couldn't bear the agonizing thought of losing her child, and according to the local folklore, her spirit remains completely tethered to the physical world. She isn't some demon out for revenge. She's a shattered mother, forever wandering Eden Hill School and the surrounding area, desperately looking for her lost child, hoping against hope to somehow be reunited.
Which leaves us with a lingering chill as the embers of our campfire explainer start to burn down. Because if Agatha is forever wandering, forever searching those dark streets and empty school corridors and agonizing sorrow, well, where is she wandering tonight? The next time you find yourself alone on a strangely quiet street, you might just want to look over your shoulder. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.